Aloha, I'm here with Mikey and Sandy again at MAGFest again. It's like it's an annual thing, this MAGFest of yours. Yeah. I don't get it.
Yeah, you get used to it after a while.
I mean, only doing it once every 12 months, what's that about?
Well, in this case it was 13 months, because this time MAGFest is in February instead of January.
Well, on the plus side, that meant that for once, my bus ticket was actually cheaper than my ticket to the event itself.
So, as it's become sort of a tradition, I guess.
Sort of a tradition. We're not like fanatics about it or anything.
Yeah.
It's more of a Christmas and Easter kind of thing.
We watched Hanna-Barbera movie, and now we're gonna do an unscripted review of it.
Shocker on Shock Street, I know.
Alright, this time it was Scooby Doo and the Ghoul School.
Or as we like to call it, Scooby Doo meets the facts of life.
He calls it that. I've never actually watched that show.
You see, the movie's all about you take the good and you take the bad. You take them both, and then you have the facts of life. I mean, think about it. Miss Grimwood is Miss Garrett, Sabella's Blair, Winnie's Joe, Tanis is Tootie. I want to say Elsa's Natalie, and Fanny. Is it Fanny or Fanty? Because they went back and forth.
I think Phantasma's the full name.
Alright, but like, whoever she is, I think she was like Molly Ringwald's character before she left the show, because I don't think Pippa had joined the cast by 1988, I don't think.
Alright. I should probably say that even with all about 100 or so things I can point to and think that's dumb or silly, I can still say I like this movie.
Yeah, I mean, it is of the three probably the only one that holds together most consistently, because the Reluctant Werewolf, it has a good idea for a story, but the story just goes completely out the window once the race starts. And the Boo Brothers just doesn't seem to have much of a story at all, from what I can tell.
The Boo Brothers is basically just one long treasure hunt.
Yeah, I mean,
and I'm not saying that's bad. I liked Boo Brothers,
right?
Because when I first watched it, I was into like treasure hunt style things. So sure, I enjoyed that.
Well, Boo Brothers is like 20 minutes of story spread out over an hour, I think.
Yeah, that's how accurate to put it. While Ghoul School this is something I mentioned in a previous video about how some of those 10 movies feel like they're not a full movie in themselves, or more just like individual stories that are connected to a certain degree. In this case, the main story being the ghouls, girls versus Revolta, the evil witch.
Right.
But she's only in there for like mostly the second half. There's a slight presence to her in the first half of the film, but for the most part, that's more focused on a different story where the Ghoul School girls are trying to face off against some army kids in a game of volleyball.
Yes, and like every other Hanna-Barbera related sports thing, the secret to winning is cheating, and lots of it.
Yeah, it's the Callaway Army boys who, frankly, cheat right at the beginning.
Right.
Because once they realize they're going to lose this game, they just toss a remote control power into the volleyball so that they can specifically control the game.
Right.
Which I've seen them do in other Hanna-Barbera specials, like the Pebbles and Bam Bam show.
Or that one movie on the Disney Channel. But here's the weird thing. They talk about Shaggy being their gym teacher, right? And he's their teacher for like a day before the game, so clearly they could have won at any point in the past, they just chose not to.
Yeah, that's another thing is like, this movie has a weird sense of time, since by all accounts, you could assume that the entire events of the movie take place over 1 week.
Right.
Or it's entirely possible that Shaggy shows up there in September.
Right.
There's an event that occurs at Halloween. And that's not even that's like the halfway point of the movie. So in theory, he could have been there for 2 months, or like 4 days or so. But we don't get an actual indication out of that.
Right, but then like the day after Halloween, the girls get kidnapped, and as soon as he rescues them, it's like the end of the school year.
Yeah. So it's the question of like, how long was he there for? Because even towards the end, it feels like he's starting to get used to it.
Right.
So he has to have been there for a while.
And actually, we figured out, because we sat down and we looked this up, this takes place before Scooby Doo and the Reluctant Werewolf, so he's not enemies with Dracula yet. But considering that in this movie things end on such good terms with him and Dracula's daughter, and in the next movie he's Dracula's enemy, this ending is kind of sad, if you think about it.
Yeah. Well, that's also assuming that all these films take place in one extremely long continuity. Which, by the way, if we do assume that, this is an observation I made like 4 years ago. If you assume that Scooby-Doo's one huge long continuity and all the films and TV shows, like all 5 of them, take place in one, were actually all did happen.
Right.
Which they seem to have alluded to in which one was it? Mystery Incorporated.
Right.
But if we assume that, that means that during his lifetime, they've met Dracula, Frankenstein, the Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, witches, aliens, zombies, and all this has happened to them. Of course, maybe that's why they don't question the talking dogs.
Right. Or if you gotta figure, is this before or after they teamed up with Daphne and Vincent Van Gogh?
I don't know if that one came out before this one or not.
Because if
future Mikey, you're going to have to put that up on screen.
Because if that came after this one, then this might be the first Scooby Doo related anything that had black people in it. You think about it, because like they have like the black cadet and the Hispanic cadet, and then in the 13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo, they're hanging out with this gypsy kid, right? So this may be the movie that broke the color barrier. Not to mention, Sabella is purple. I'll say this about Sabella, right? She seems like the kind of character who, when she grows up, she's going to track Shaggy down, either to eat him or to make sweet, sweet love to him. I think it's going to be a little bit of both because she's a vampire. But the point is, like, this goes back to this whole trend during the 80s of there was always at least one character in a kids movie who was drawn to be appealing to adults, and it was weird.
Okay, this is one instance where I think he's overthinking this a little too much.
Scooby Doo caused 9/11.
I emphasize on the a little.
Just a little bit.
Right. Though it is also nice that this is one of the earlier examples where the monsters are real, and they're frankly for the most part not the bad guys.
Yeah, it's sort of actually,
except for the main witch Revolta and her minions, but the 5 primary monster characters, the girl students, they're all just frankly pretty nice people.
And what was the deal with Revolta's psychic? Was he like a booger or something?
You mean that weird, like, servant blood?
Yeah, like the grim creeper.
I think he was like a half plant monster.
He looked like a booger. The whole time I was thinking of him as like, ladies and gentlemen, it's Bastion Booger. He was a wrestler. You wouldn't get him. It's like, I'm the Booger Man.
Yeah, I haven't watched wrestling in about 6 years at this point.
Actually, while we were watching, Iannone and Chris the Nerd came in, and they walked right. What had just happened was Shaggy was being brainwashed, and he took the girls on a field trip, and Mrs. Garrett's pet dragon had gone with them, but he went secretly because he wasn't supposed to go. And she comes into the kitchen to just see how her cookie's going. He's like, this scorpion stew is ice cold. And I turned to Iannone and said, so would you say it's too cool, Scorpio? He doesn't get it. He doesn't follow wrestling.
Nope, I do not follow wrestling.
Yes. He doesn't follow anything at all. He's just lost, alone in the wilderness.
I'm a drifter, not lost.
And like a drifter, you were born to walk alone. I have to say that of all the Scooby-Doo movies I've seen, and that's including the more recent, kind of more serious ones like Zombie Island and all them, this is probably the only one that actually holds up all the way through. Because take Zombie Island, right? It's got solid animation, and it's got good direction, and it has a well-paced story, but once the actual villain is revealed, it just becomes completely forgettable. I mean, the only reason I remember who the villain is because Cartoon Network used to give it away in the commercials all the time.
The main thing I always remember about Zombie Island was when they were advertising it all the way back, like, this time, the monsters are real.
Well, I think they were kind of banking on the fact that
Which is funny, though, because considering this movie came out 10 years earlier.
Well, I think that with this movie and Reluctant Werewolf and Boo Brothers, they were kind of banking on the fact that those were only ever shown on the Disney Channel to maybe Cartoon Network's audience hadn't seen it before.
Well, Cartoon Network didn't exist at the time that these movies were made, because these movies were made in the 80s. Cartoon Network started in 92, I believe. Maybe 93.
Yeah, that's another thing. It was always weird seeing Scooby Doo on the Disney Channel because this is back when like the Disney Channel was pretending that nothing outside of Disney existed, so they didn't have commercials or anything. And all of a sudden, Scooby Doo, hey, it's Hanna-Barbera. It's like, whoa. And that's all I have to say about that. All in all, good movie for what it is.
Yeah, like I said, there's so many things that I can point to and think that's kind of ridiculous. That kind of doesn't make too much sense. Frankly, there's so many like weird moments that just like stick with your head of like, okay, I don't get it, But at the end of the day, I do still like this movie. It's just...
It's fun.
Yeah. It seems like even the characters seem to be having fun with their situation, even when their lives are sort of being threatened by the evil witch.
Alright, well, that's all I have to say about it.
Yeah, like I said, there's less of it to say compared to when we did Arabian Nights last year.
Yeah, Arabian Nights was just insane from beginning to end. Like, I don't even remember what, like, the overall point they were trying to make was. At least with this one, there was kind of a, diversity is good kind of thing going, even though it still shows that they were right to be afraid of the weird new people with different skin colors. Just saying.
But overall, I do recommend this one more than Arabian Nights.
Yeah, definitely. And,
on that note, thanks for listening to another one of our unscripted review style things.
Yes, we ranted, you listened, a splendid time was had by all.